Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's your dude CJ. This is CJ. I thought I would do a video today talking about a handful of books that center around the idea of mothering. Found this to be a topic that is kind of ever present in my reading, especially the last 2 years or so, and I think that's for a few reasons. I'm getting older. The women writers I'm reading are primarily entering a phase where they're, deciding to be a mother or not. So their work reflects that. It's a question that has kind of circled my brain for the last few years. And it's, as I get older, I'm just like kind of interrogating and thinking about the relationship between me and my mom more. And books help me think through that. So before we get into it, huge caveat, I'm not a mother. Some of them are coming from a cis and heteronormative lens, so be mindful of that. I'm definitely interested in reading more about queer parenting, and if you have any recommendations that are up that alley, please let me know. I think that's really important and more aligned with my ethos anyway, if I was gonna become a parent, right? And when I say the word mother, when I say the word mothering, I hope you don't feel like I'm limiting any people who are perhaps non-binary or gender non-conforming in the idea of being a parent and experiencing parenthood. I think a lot of this could have crossovers even if you don't identify as a woman, but for the sake of this video, for the sake of my experience as a cis woman, being raised by a cis woman, that's the context I'm living in, and that's the context we're going to talk about things in. So just a caveat there, okay? Great. Next up, we have Motherhood by Sheila Heti. This is probably one of the most gorgeous pieces of autofiction I've ever read in my life. Kind of like startlingly so, very cutting, very gorgeous. In this, we follow a woman who is in her late 30s and is being dictated by society and also her body and biological factors that are happening within her to decide rather hastily if she wants to become a parent or not. And the moral kind of unpacking of what mothering means, what it means to procreate, what it means to have a child in this earth, and about voluntary childlessness was so refreshing for me to read about, and was just a really honest and earnest insight, and very, very much so like a vulnerable insight into our protagonist's mind. I believe they're unnamed. Yeah, I think this was just like a good perspective that being a mother, being a parent isn't some kind of like obligatory sacrifice. It's not a glorification of what it means to move on to the next chapter of your life. That's something that I feel like, as someone who I'm 99% sure I'm going to be childless by choice, when I've been talking to people who are in their later 30s, they're like, yeah, like just wait till you see, life sure gets boring, like doing the same things you did all throughout your 20s and your 30s. Kids provide a whole new context and meaning to your life. And while I'm sure that's like completely true and valid for them, like that just seems like a really weird thing to say to someone. And I think that's like the general narrative that is being passed down from people who have children to people who do not have children. So this was just like a candid, frank, but like positive and really hopeful insight into what the decision not to have a child can look like for other people and for yourself. There's also some striking writing in here about kind of like resentment that the narrator has. There's also like some really striking writing in here about the resentment our narrator felt towards her own mother for not being like completely devoted to the cause of her upbringing and not wanting to inflict that on her kids. Also some like really interesting experimentation with form in here. The narrator kind of has this gimmick of flipping a coin over and over again as a means of directing some immediate questions she has in her life, but also asking like what she should do, like putting the onus on fate, like this idea of fate deciding her will, and like as a woman born into the place and the time she is, she doesn't have to, like she has more control and agency over fate. So I loved it. I loved it. It's really good. It's not for everyone. This is navel-gazy, as they say. this is a Marmite love it or hate it book, but if you like a contemplative, slow burn, gorgeous piece of prose meditation inside of someone's head, you're gonna love Motherhood. Next up, I read a book called The Life of the Mind by Christine Smallwood. I loved this book. Similar in tone to Motherhood, i.e. it's really introspective and kind of follows a woman moving through the world, but the context is a bit different. The plot of this novel is essentially that a woman who is a adjunct professor working in an academic institution finds out that she is experiencing a miscarriage, and as she's experiencing this miscarriage, she is moving about her world, she's moving through her day, she's interacting with her colleagues and her husband and her friends, and kind of really weighing up what this loss means to her, and kind of working through bit by bit what the emotional attachment it is to what could have been, right? To this role she might have wanted to fulfill as a parent. And how to properly grieve and sense the magnitude of what it is she's even mourning was really interesting to me. It kind of almost had like a scientific, medical lens without being like completely sterile. There's definitely still like some emotion and like affection and despair in this novel, but it was more removed. It was less of an emotional reaction to the situation at hand. I would say it was more like philosophical and a removed perspective of what her body was going through and having to do that alone and in secret, and what it means to mourn potential of something. Not only is she kind of moving through mourning her academic potential, you know, she feels kind of stifled in her career and like she's not getting the recognition that maybe she thought she would have in the academic world, but she's also kind of weighing on the other hand, like, could she find meaning through this role of being a parent and creating something new, and you know, the potential and hope in that situation, and then that being kind of taken away from her and no one knowing. I loved this book so much. I need to buy it. I actually got a copy of it on NetGalley, so I don't own a physical copy of it, but I already want to reread it because I feel like I would get something completely new out of it already, and I just read it a couple months ago. But my mother and I don't talk about a gorgeous, gorgeous essay collection. Whew. Yeah, I mean, this is no joke, gets right to the point, genuinely what these writers do not talk about to their mothers. I would say in tone, this is definitely heavy. It's sad. It's both from writers who are kind of estranged from their mothers, whether that be because of abuse or neglect they experienced as a child, or them not seeing them as a fully realized human being when they're adults, and also between children who are extremely close to their parents. So it's really raw and poignant, but I would say messy. Like, some of these read like diary entries, some of them are more like critical essays, but all are like extremely affecting. And I would say the group of writers that they pulled from are pretty diverse. Like, we have Andre Aciman, Carmen Maria Machado, Brandon Taylor, Alexandra Chee, and some other folks. I just really like this kind of like constellation centered around motherhood, and it just showed the polarity of that role and that experience, and how it's really can be sacred but also kind of torturous for some people. And what I got out of this most clearly was the expectations, like the emotional expectations that people put on mothers versus fathers. That rang really real and true for me, and kind of helped me think through some of the, you know, I wouldn't say baggage I have around my parents. My parents are great, but kind of like the expectations that I have around my mom that I don't have around my dad, simply because she is a woman and therefore should have more tools or is more emotionally attuned to, I don't know, like be able to meet me where I am. It's interesting. It's interesting. This is a really good anthology pick it up. I hear it's awesome on audio. My best friend read it on audio and really liked it. So we have Stranger Care by Sarah Santilles. I read an arc of this on my Kindle on NetGalley, so I don't have a physical copy. This was a memoir about a woman, Sarah, who is experiencing trying to adopt through the foster care system, and it kind of accounts her relationship to mothering before, like while her and her husband was married and deciding if they wanted to have biological kids or adopt or foster, or what their path to parenting was going to look like. Them going through the bureaucracy and the system of fostering and adoption in the United States, and accounting for how challenging that was for them and how inaccessible it really made becoming a parent. All the hoops you have to jump through, how you know, how like merciless it is and seemingly unfair and exhausting. And then it details her life once she got placed with her foster daughter named Coco, and how their relationship came to be, the bonding that took place, and eventually what happens when Coco's biological mother fights for custody again. So I just thought this was like one interesting, like not something that I have a lot of insight into is the foster care system as a whole, and was like a good story to read, build it, and like had some momentum to it. But also just like so raw and vulnerable. Included like some really beautiful nature writing that were kind of nice, like a nice grounding, palate cleansing little bits interspersed to just kind of talk about mothering as a more like holistic, like natural hippie vibe, which I really liked. And I don't know, it was just like really full of heart and cool that some people have that instinct to parent and to take care of other people so strongly in their heart that they would go through all of that to be able to access that kind of joy that's over the bridge after all of those obstacles. So excellent writing, really interesting story, interspersed with some, you know, hippie nature stuff, and just a delightful memoir overall. Loved it. And I have Detransition Baby by Tori Peters. This is a book I just recently read. It is about two women, Katrina and Reese, and a man named Ames, who detransitioned, used to be called Amy, was living as a trans woman and dating Reese. I'm sure you've seen a synopsis of this on the internet somewhere, so I'm not going to go into it too big, but I'm going to talk about why it was affecting to me concerning the idea of mothering specifically. This book is dramatic and messy and fun to read, but also had a really earnest and vulnerable section about how what Reese's journey is like as she is trying to obtain the status of mother, and how hard that is for trans women, trans people in relationships in general, queer families, the barrier to entry for, like I was talking about in Stranger Care, for the bureaucracy of the system and getting placed with not only adoption but like healthcare. You know, trying to adopt or foster for cis straight people is already hard enough, and the additional barriers that come with these intersections of identity. I think like the questions that they were posing about different ways to make family with the inclusion of Katrina and Ames with Reese, and trying to reestablish like the nuclear one woman, one man, have a baby and raise it in isolation, because, you know, that obviously hasn't worked out too well for the majority of people. Going back to this more communal instinct to raise children as a community, right? To raise them in community with fellow kids, to have more than one person raise them. This idea that like you can be a mother to someone without giving birth to them. Parenting is more of like an act of service, a piece of like love that you can pass on to other people. I think it was just like a really interesting dissection of motherhood and selfhood and womanhood across the gender binary at large. I really enjoyed reading this, even though it doesn't leave us with any tidy conclusions at the end about what success looks like despite all of that. So that's it. Those are a few books about motherhood. I could have, you know, I really could have went harder on this, like Burnt Sugar. I would say that's about mothering. Deborah Levy, huge mothering vibes. Beloved by Toni Morrison. I would say I could include that in this video. But these are a few that were top of mind that were more to the point and less like a plot element, if you see what I mean. Well, let me know what other little wrap-up things you would want me to film. I did one about the internet, books about being online. This is my one about motherhood. What else is there? That's it. It's just being online or being a mother. That's all. That's the spectrum now. Let me know if you have any ideas. See you later. Love you. Goodbye.